Welcome to The Debrief, where we talk with the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the headlines they're covering this week and where the story's going next. I'm Sarah Westwood, and I'm here today with commentary editor Conn Carroll. And Conn, the Biden administration is announcing this sort of big border enforcement push that's focused specifically on Venezuelan migrants. So tell us about what that is and why is it specific to Venezuelans?
Sure. So at first glance, it sounds actually like good news. The headlines are Biden administration agrees with Mexico to send Venezuelans back to Mexico, which sounds good, especially since the number of Venezuelans illegally crossing the border has gone up over 150% in the past year. But then you read into it, and it's actually not as big as a deal as it seems. So what happens is that up until now, Biden administration has not been using Title 42 to return Venezuelans back to Mexico because Mexico wasn't going to take them, and we don't have the diplomatic relations with Venezuela, so Venezuela wasn't going to take them either. So now Biden has formed an agreement with Mexico, so Mexico will take the Venezuelans back. So, this sounds good. We're going to be returning all Venezuelans who illegally crossed the border back to Mexico. But the problem there is that Biden has already created some big loopholes in his existing Title 42 policy. So unaccompanied minors already are exempted from Title 42 under Biden, and families. So basically any adult who crosses with a child is also exempt from Title 42. So the only people that this policy will apply to are single adults crossing from Venezuela, who, there are a lot of big chunk of those people, but you're still going to have a huge loophole of the unaccompanied minors and the families still getting in and being released into the country by Biden.
So, despite the loopholes,
yes,
conceptually, how is that different from Trump's Remain in Mexico policy, which Biden blasted as cruel and ended on day one?
It's an excellent question. So Trump would take the people in. Remember, Title 42 wasn't an option when Trump created the Remain in Mexico policy because COVID didn't exist yet, thank God,
right.
Which we could go back to that well. So instead, he processed them through Title 8. So he would take them in. They would be allowed to make their asylum claims through Title 8. They would be in deportation proceedings. But then instead of being released into the United States where they could live wherever they want, they would then return to Mexico where they would settle in camps, and then they could meet their asylum hearings while they were in those camps. They would not be allowed in. So it was through a totally different title that these migrants are being processed.
So new data shows that, it's a suspicion that many have had that shows that most Democratic campaign staffers are more white and more highly educated than the average American. What are the implications for Democratic politics?
Sure. So this is a new Swarthmore study that looked at a pretty huge data set, 5,000 campaign staffers on presidential, primary, and general election campaigns from 2004, up and through 2020. That's a big group of people. And what it found is that campaign staffers for both Republicans and Democrats were both whiter and more likely to be college educated than the general population. But the difference was much starker for Democrats just because their base is more diverse than the Republican base. But even more worse for the Democrats is the overbalance of Ivy League elite schools. So among campaign staffers for Democrats, close to 40% of them went to Ivy League schools, while for the whole nation as a whole, it's only like 4%. And so when you have this very white, very privileged, very highly educated elite institutions class of people that are running campaigns, that's going to skew what messages they decide are important and how they communicate them. So, when you look at this current election, you have Democrats in virtually all races that are just running on abortion. When you look at the polls, even among Democrats, what people are concerned about is inflation. They're concerned about crime. They're concerned about issues that affect them every day. Not the same things that rich white people with high, elite educations are worried about.
So some Democrats have been sort of sounding the alarm about this for the past couple of years, right? This increasing gravitation towards faculty lounge language or stuff that people find alienating, including, the Democratic rhetoric on the border, like we've been talking about, can also be, out of touch with what Americans want to see. Are there any signs that Democrats are starting to, maybe this is the cycle that they wake up to that issue?
There is some, the report does talk about how, especially on the becoming more diverse, racially wise, Democrats are making progress, but again, not on the education side. And I still think that's a problem because when you have people that go to these elite schools and learn to talk a certain way, it's just not how the rest of America talks. And that's going to be a continuing problem for them.
Well, Conn, thank you so much for being here today.
Absolutely.
You can get more writing from Conn and the rest of the commentary team at washingtonexaminer.com.